Hello, this is Kara from Kara Tarot, and I'd like to do just a brief video today of my top 5 tarot decks from 2024. These may not have been the decks that I was most excited about when I got them, or decks that I even had previously, but these are the ones that I have ended up using the most and feeling the most connected with in 2024. And I narrowed it down to 5 just to make it even more concise and really my top picks. I'm going to start with my very favorite deck. It won't be any surprise to you for any of you who have watched any of my other videos because I mention it a lot. By Jody Boginski-Barbesi and Karen Boginski, Influence of the Angels Tarot. It is a collage art deck. I would say the works are based mostly with artworks from the early 1700s. There are some that are much earlier and some that are later, but that's where the majority of them are focused, I feel. And each deck has some kind of relationship to an angel. The majors mostly represent particular angels. The minors have an angel somewhere relating to the main figure. I will also add that a lot of the court cards are actually portraits of famous historical people. So you have that layered meaning of what that person was known for in relationship to the meaning of the card. And as I have said before, I really love the way the book is written. And in addition to that, for every card, there is what is called an angelic message. And I have, since mid-November, been posting on my Instagram page a card a day using the angelic message as an affirmation. So an affirmation from this deck, a card a day. And through the course of that, I have seen even more as I spend this intensive time with one card a day, seeing the details and just falling even more in love with the symbolism and the details in this really magnificently, brilliantly put together deck. Influence of the Angels by Jody Boginski-Barbesi and Karen Boginski. It is a mass market deck available by US Games. And I like it so much, I decided to go ahead and get another backup deck because I realized it is my favorite deck and I want to have a backup. My second deck is one that I have done an individual deck review of, The Distant Past Tarot by Jay Larson. Also a collage style deck. I'd say this time focusing a little more on the Romantic era painters, but again, there are some variety amongst that. There also tend to be unifying themes created by Jay Larson, added into the collage that unify the deck overall and also bring up certain things within different characters of the deck to have tie-ins between different elements of the deck. It is a deck that if I were going to create a deck myself, it would probably look a lot like this deck. It speaks to me on a very deep level. This is also a deck that I this year got a second copy of. When I did the deck review, I was using the tarot-sized version. You can get it in 3 versions because you go to makeplayingcards.com and you can get it in 3 sizes: poker, tarot, or large size. I initially got the tarot size, which is a linen finish, a very slippery linen finish, I will say. And then I decided I really loved the artwork so much I wanted it to be larger so I could see it better. That's my dog, sorry. And she's agreeing that it's a really good deck. And you're a good girl. So I got the large size and I'm just loving it. That is the Distant Past Tarot. My third deck was actually a deck that I had hoped and wished that somebody would create, a Winnie the Pooh based deck. And the first edition, 2023 edition of the Wisdom of Pooh Tarot, created by Serafina and Angel Mesa, illustrated by Kat Al Amsel, is just a beautiful realization of that dream deck. It is illustrated by Kat Amsel, but highly faithful to the original illustrations in the book. So just kind of an extension of those illustrations from the book. And a really smart and fun usage of these characters in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith system. I failed to mention that all of these are Rider-Waite-Smith system decks. It's a beautiful presentation. They had some trouble with their publishers, so even though the first edition is March 2023, I did not receive mine until about September of 2024, I think it was, maybe a little before that. But I felt really lucky that I was able to get that first edition. The second edition includes Tigger, which the first does not, because of the copyright dates of Tigger was a later character. But for me, I always felt like Tigger took over, and because I knew Winnie the Pooh without Tigger first, so this was the perfect deck for me. It was available with gilded edges or canary yellow edges, and I love the yellow edges, so that's what I got. I have also done an individual deck review on this deck, and you can look at that up. But that was my number 3 deck. Now, my 4th deck is the surprise. My 4th deck is a deck that bumped other things out of the way. It is I think I forgot to say Wisdom of Pooh Tarot. I don't know if the first edition is still available, but it's by Rue and Vervain. That's the publishing company. So the next deck is an artist deck, and as is the Winnie the Pooh deck, an artist-created deck. The Forager's Daughter Tarot. I cannot rave too much about this deck. It has beautiful kind of smoky, muted tones, but very colorful, the full range of colors, but all kind of unified with the kind of smoky earthiness of the tones used. Each card is really a poster-worthy artwork on its own, but also incredibly literate about the Rider-Waite-Smith system, as well as being one of the best intuitive decks I've ever had. It almost literally speaks to me, and I hear it just flashes things to my eyes. I'd say the Influence of the Angels is a deck that I kind of heard in my head, and the Forager's Daughter is one that just kind of gives me literal flashes of insight. It really couldn't be more far visually from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, except that it has an Art Nouveau border. But otherwise, the focus on nature themes and animals and plants and foraging, every element of this tarot deck is so wonderfully thought out, so wonderfully presented, and beautifully presented. I have raved about the book, which is really a coffee table worthy book with gilded edges, where each card is a full page of the book, and then each card is broken down into points called dissection, compass, reflection, position, and sign. And these are each a different way to approach and think about the card. And I just think everything about this deck is brilliant. If you've heard the term affinity group or affinity deck, I call these affinity decks, which are decks which are on a particular theme or hobby, like the yarn tarot is an affinity deck because it's about yarn crafts. I would consider this an affinity deck, and I really tell people that if you're planning to create an affinity deck, a deck on a certain topic with a certain type of interest, you need to see this deck and study this deck, because every element of this deck was done exquisitely, just so brilliant, and also, as I said, so intuitive, just marvelous on every level. The Forager's Daughter Tarot, you can purchase that from her Etsy shop, which is called The Forager's Daughter. And last but not least, one that also was a longtime favorite of mine. I got at the same time I got The Influence of the Angels, and together they were like this wonderful tag team. The Wonderland Tarot by Chris Abbey and Morgana Abbey, and based on the original illustrations from the books, the original books, with illustrations by Sir John Tenniel. And this deck, I have said before, it's one of the few decks, it just made me laugh so much in my deck interview because it was just so rude and snarky. And I do sometimes get straight readings with this deck, but I also always have to remember that this deck can be rude and snarky. So if I get, it seems to me so far, if the question is particularly emotional or sensitive, that's when the snark comes out. And it often will be, which is just oddly appropriate for a Wonderland tarot deck, the answer will be a mirror image of what it should be, which is I will get, for example, one time, I don't remember what the question was, but the answer was the Seven of Swords, which is basically saying, well, you could always lie and steal as a way to handle something. And it just made me laugh because, of course, that's not the option. But that's what the deck was saying. And I just did a reading with it last week where I got 3 cards that were exactly the opposite of what the answer should have been. And when I did a mirror image of that and reversed them, and the reading made complete sense for the answer. And so for that reason, it got pushed down to number 5, because I can't use it for everything, because I do constantly have to be aware of the snarky tone and the rudeness and the mirror image answers, all of that, which is fascinating to work with. And it's one that remains out for me all the time. I have right now 3 decks that are constantly out, and that is The Influence of Angels, the Distant Past Tarot, and the Wonderland Tarot. So those are the 3 that remain out, but I will say this is the one I use the least of those 3, just because of that snark aspect, and I have to be careful with it, and I would think twice about using it with a reading for someone else, unless I know it's not going to be something that's like a deeply sensitive issue. So I'm glad I've been able to keep this short. These are just my top 5 decks. I have been enjoying watching other people's top 5 and top 10 deck videos from 2024. But as I said, these are the ones that I reach for regularly, that stay out, and also the ones that have impressed me tremendously this year. And so I'll be starting out my year with them, of course. I think I forgot to mention the Distant Past Tarot. I actually am doing another series on my Instagram page where I am using the scripture quotes from the book The Contemplative Tarot by Bethany Muller. I think it's Bethany, but the last name is Muller, where she has either a scriptural quote or a quote by a great religious thinker for each card. So again, it's the same kind of thing, kind of like an affirmation, but those are scripture cards. I'm using the Distant Past Tarot for that, and I intend to continue that with a different deck in the coming year. And I also intend to continue using the affirmations from the influence of the Angel Tarot with a different deck when I work my way through that deck. I think one of those, probably the Angel Affirmations, I will probably continue with Terra Volatile, which has kind of a similar visual tone, but that's a deck that I'm looking forward to exploring in the future, and you will hear more about that from me, I'm sure. So thanks again for spending time with me. I hope you've enjoyed a reiteration of the decks that I've enjoyed the most in 2024. Have a fantastic new year filled with unexpected delights.